Hi, my name is Regan Walsh. I am the author of Heart Boss, and my life's work is helping women shift from survival to purpose mode.
In this episode of Brave Talks, I chat with Regan Walsh, bestselling author of Heart Boss: Trust Your Gut, Shed Your Shoulds, and Create a Life You Love. Regan is an NYU-certified executive and life coach, and our conversation explores facets of heart bravery and what it means to be fully present and in love with life. How does the courage to set boundaries, ask for help, and be vulnerable ultimately enliven our relationships and help us love and live better? Was writing about that this morning that it and you talk about it so well in Heart Boss that parenting is so hard. Marriage is so hard. These things aren't easy, and every time that we upgrade ourselves, we go through adversity, we go through challenge, we have to make the next best decision even when it's shitty. And we have to make these transformations in our life or rebirths. It's hard, but then we come out on the other side and we're Reagan 2.0, Reagan 3.0, Reagan 4.0, and we're never that Reagan that was less resilient. We always come out stronger because you did it, and you're still alive. I just finished Yes to Life with Viktor Frankl, which is a great book. But you live through these times and you survive the things that you think are unsurvivable.
And like, you know that your life will never be as good. When you're in it, when you're feeling in that dark spot and you don't think you can ever get on the other side of it. Oh, it's so, yeah, it can be so tough.
I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but every time I've had something as deep as a death and a rebirth experience, like radical honesty, when I decided that I was going to be open and honest about my journey with body image and with plastic surgery and eating disorders and all that, when I was a model, really with a skyrocketing career. That was a moment when I had when I had Oliver, that physical death and rebirth of a mother, and then like this now separation of identities where it's like, okay, I'm a mother, but that's not all I am. I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm, all these other things as well. List goes on. Um, but when I have those moments of I'm in it, I want to run away from my life. I'm having postpartum depression. I'm anxious. I'm those moments where you're just like, can I turn to drugs? Can I turn to alcohol? Can I turn to pain? What is it that can make me feel again? Because right now I'm numb. It is for me. I have not been able to have the success yet. Maybe I'm not wise enough and old enough and haven't had as many upgrades as I need. But to be objective about the experience without a therapist, it is impossible, and I think that's why communication, connection is so important because and honesty to tell people, "This is how I'm feeling," and have support from your community, your loved ones to say, "That's how I felt too, and it's normal," or, like, "I know you wanna run from your life, but, like, let's, like, take a beat here and you know, feel the feelings, let it through." Anyway, so just like the objectivity of being in those dark moments, especially if you're listening and you're like, fuck, I'm really like in it and I know what she's talking about. It's hard to see that objectively. The only way I've been able to see that in a way that didn't feel so acute and personal to me was through my therapist and time, but like that was it.
Yeah. I think like each decade of our lives, we're learning, right? And growing and able to get there, but you need those support systems along the way. I share in Heart Boss that in high school, I was depressed and I didn't know what that was. Mental health wasn't something that was talked about back then. And I was at this summer camp and somebody was sharing their story and talked about depression and everything that he said. I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly how I feel. And I was 17 and I remember telling his wife, I said, I think that I'm also depressed. I need help. And had I not said that, like, I just shudder to think what would have happened. Like, here I was, this kid, and I didn't know why I was sad all the time. I had so much to be happy about. And Raising my hand and asking for help. That was the first time I ever talked to a therapist, is because I had the courage to say, wait a minute, I feel what you're sharing here, and the power of sharing stories, right? If we don't share our experiences, how can we help other people that feel like shame, like, oh, I can't talk about
Yeah.
that?
That was so brave of you to even own that feeling.
Looking back on it, I'm like, I can't believe I did that at 17. I was scared shitless.
When I read that, I was like, "Wow, that is." You had to be in a point of such pain that you were like you had to be so depressed to know that if you didn't get help now, there was no turning back kind of thing.
Yeah, and I was able to turn it on, right? So I was able to be active and involved, and then I would go home and shut the door and just stay in a dark bedroom for hours, right? And feel sad. And when I was in public, a lot of times I was just like faking it, right? I was just playing a role. I'm like, oh, so if anyone's out there feeling like they're suffering, ask for help.
Yeah, I think one of the other brave things you did too was talk to your mom about it. Like that whole thing was super brave. Do you wanna tell that story?
Sure. So, okay, I'm at this summer camp. This man shares his experience. I reach out and I said, I feel the same way. What do I do? And he said, why don't I reach out to my therapist and ask her if she can talk to you about depression? And I was all in. And so I set up this call with this woman. She was a therapist in Connecticut. I lived in the Midwest in Columbus. And I told her how I was feeling, and she explained depression to me and that it was something a lot of people had. And she said, why don't you go get your mom and tell her there's somebody that wants to talk to her? So we lived in a ranch house, and I told my mom, there's somebody that wants to talk to you. And she was in her bedroom on her landline, and she picked it up, and I ran downstairs to the basement, where my brother's bedroom was, and I got on another landline, and I just listened to this therapist explain to my mom everything that I had shared with her, because I was too afraid to tell my mom, right? Like, we grew up in a family that was very loving, but there's no real communication, right? Like, it just was a different way of being raised. I was loved wholeheartedly, but we didn't talk about deep things. And so it was that therapist that helped me amplify what it was I was feeling. And then my mom got me help in Columbus. And so, had I not had the courage to raise my hand and tell that man, like, I feel how you feel, and then he was so courageous in saying, why don't I get you in touch with my therapist? And that therapist said, why don't I talk to your mom to help you communicate this? And that changed my life. All of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember vividly telling my mom that I needed to go to an eating disorder therapy clinic, and her this is in college, right? I had been a high performance athlete, D1 athlete, played softball, and like athletes are tough, like who has eating disorders? It's like what dancers have. And there I was, and it's not true at all. The statistics are incredible. 1 in 3 athletes have eating disorders regardless of the sport. Um and women, the statistic is almost even higher. Um and I remember going to my mom helped me find it, the therapy, outpatient therapy, but I was seeing a nutritionist. I wasn't seeing an eating disorder therapist. And this is not what my mom set up. Like she knew I needed help. You said like you grew up in a family with a lot of love, but you didn't have a lot of communication. That's just the way it was, like real communication. But I think, Reagan, that's actually what everyone grew up in. Like, I share this story and people are like, "Yeah, like, that sounds like it was just a generation." Like, that's you just swept it under the rug and, you know, that was my family too. So, and not in a bad way. I don't have animosity about it. Like, it just we had to break those barriers, and that was part of my upgrading as well. Um, but anyway, I it started as going to a nutritionist who was really an eating disorders psychologist or something, and then, it just kind of, like, snowballed from there, and then it became, "Oh, I'm allowed to talk about my eating disorder," and then it was eventually to the point of, like, Emily's talking about full body liposuction and all these other things where she risked her life to her platform and to her peeps, but like not at Thanksgiving dinner.
Right, totally. Why is it easier to share that with strangers? It's so bizarre, like, how that we were raised like that and have these loving families, but you just didn't talk about difficult things. In fact, one of my brothers, and I won't get into too many details, but one of my brothers recently read Heart Boss, and we've communicated more in the last week about very deep personal things because of Heart Boss. And I am so proud of him for opening up. You know, he's in his 50s and we have just like, he is cracked wide open and he's sharing all these things with me. And I'm like, holy moly, I cannot believe me writing this down has given you the courage to share these things and to be vulnerable. Like what would have happened if we had the courage to do that, you know, as kids? And I'm curious how our kids will be different. Like, will they be too smothered? Because I'm always like, "I love you." Like, my family, we didn't say, "I love you." I was very loved. But it is uncomfortable to me to this day. Like, now my mom says, "I love you" every time I see her, but it's, like, a little bit awkward. Now I'm getting used to it, but it's funny that that's awkward to me. Like, this is weird, you know? Like, I just told my brother I was talking about that I loved him, to his face in person last week. And I was like, I've never done that in my life, you
Mm.
know? And he's my brother.
Mm.
That's so weird. But my kids are getting raised in a household where they're hearing "I love you" every day, probably multiple times a day. It's so strange. So we'll have to get them back onto Brave Talks in 25 years.
They're probably way wiser than we were then. They could probably come on a little earlier.
Yeah, maybe.
The cool thing about Heart Boss, by you just saying, your brother read it and it transformed your relationship, it's kind of like reading Esther Perel. And then, I mean, not that this is like an erotica sex book or like relationship book, but truthfully, like if your relationships, if you are able to share, that this is your manual, your constitution of, how you want to live with your heart forward without and I hate sounding cliche. Like when you guys pick up this book, Heart Boss, trust your gut, shed your shoulds, and create a life you love. I am kicking myself right now by saying this. I really am. Because I was like, I shouldn't compare this, but it's not one of those self-help books where you're like, it's just gonna say the same old thing. Like this is actually a beautiful, beautiful life mantra and guidebook that you give us to how can we live in this way that feels fulfilling. And one of the things that I'm really in love with right now is I was just reading this poem, and the author, it talks about being an octogenarian. And I think I've talked about this on another podcast. So if you're listening, you're like, oh my God, here goes the story again. So he's like, okay, being 80 is the best years of my life because I've really had intercourse with the world. And he was able to like devour the world in poetry and to talk about all of his life experiences and living a life, you know, having the fear of life and the things that happen to us, hopefully early in life, where we're able to say, that is not how I want to live. And then upgrade to these versions of being brave, living through love, making a decision to, as you say in the book, leave a marriage that doesn't serve your happiness, go find a woman who does in the meantime, or any relationship that serves you, even if it's with yourself, um, and to continue just making those brave decisions despite the noise, despite the judgment, despite what you're projecting on other people that you think they think of you. And so Jason Silva said in a philosophical rant that he does, and I love Jason Silva. I can say love very easily. I don't know him, but I would love to know him. I love his philosophies and his teachings, but he's like, the way that we think of ourselves is the way that we think other people think of us. And so that's the way that we think of ourselves. So if we can change that, if we can change and rewire our brains to think that other people think that we are heart bosses, that we are brave, that we are whatever, leading with love and not, oh my gosh, my family is going to find out that I'm, bisexual or I'm dating a woman or not even that, but just that I'm in love, right? Like, let's just like drop the labels. It's who cares who you're seeing?
Who cares? And can you believe that, like, we all deny ourselves feeling the way we actually want to feel because of expectations we think others have for us? That is so messed up that we deprive ourselves from being like full of contentment and joy and love because of fear of what we think others will think. It's so sad. When I left that marriage and then like happened to have this like wild connection with a woman, I had never felt so happy. Like the sky was extra blue, the grass was extra green. I was so happy. And then also trying to shield people from finding out, right? Because I thought that they would, talk about me. And some people did. And who cares? I was so happy, like to experience that type of joy and freedom. That's like will always remain such a special life chapter because that's when I had the courage to say, like, this is my life and I'm going to do the things that bring me joy and make me feel good. And before, I never would have experienced that kind of love or passion or, just like joy.
For sure. I mean, my heart boss moment recently was just saying, I'm not going to be the homeschool teacher, even though I've been talking about it. And Matt's like, wait a second. You were like gung ho on homeschool and no screens, and now you're completely opposite. And I'm like, yes, because I explored those options and I realized they're not for me. I'm able to say with bravery and courage now that, like, I release that, blow it up, demolish it, and create a version of myself that does feel right, that does feel where the does make the grass extra green and the sky extra blue.
We're so afraid to change our minds because we've said something, like even with owning my business, right? I've pivoted, sometimes major pivots, sometimes small pivots every single year to get closer and closer to how it is I want to feel. And I remember early on being afraid, like, why am I afraid to make these changes? Like, I've tried it. Like, for you, you really wanted to homeschool and you gave it your best shot. And then you were in it and you were like, well, when I say yes to this, I'm saying no to feeling, good. And I can't do all of this. So instead, I'm going to make this choice that lifts the weight where my son can thrive, where I can thrive. It's so wild that we're afraid once we make a statement to change our minds. We can always change our minds. Always.
Deserves lots of pause. Lots of pause. We can always change our minds. That is so powerful and freeing. And no one's judging you for changing your mind. In fact, when you do change your mind, it gives everyone permission to just go with the flow and be flexible and adapt to their circumstances. Nothing is ever fixed. Life is not linear. We are in this cyclical process and everything is changing. Everything is giving and taking and moving, and we're all bumping up against each other. We're all these free molecules, just, stardust. And we're just interacting and having intercourse with life all together. And we're just in this big life orgy.
I love that idea of intercourse with life or intercourse with the world. I love that so much.
It just is so, I could tattoo that on me and I would be like, that will work until my earth suit is done. Yeah.
Until it's over. Yeah, like, I love that idea, as long as it's good intercourse, like, that you're living life to the fullest, and experiencing all the things, the ups and the downs.
Yes, just and you think about what is intercourse with the world? It is being so present in the moment that you feel God when the breeze sweeps through your hair. The grass is greener all of a sudden. You smell things you've never smelled. Sex is 3 hours and not, 10 minutes with a vibrator. Not to say that, that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying like
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Let's do it all though. Let's take our time. let's eat figs off the tree. Let's swim in the ocean and stay a while. Let's let sand get through our swimsuit and laugh about it, like
Yeah, totally. And also stay in tough conversations. Like, even
yes.
on the downside, like, to be able to stay in a difficult conversation and to sit with someone in their grief, like, it's so powerful when you do that, when it's uncomfortable and you just make space to be uncomfortable and know, like, this too shall pass, but right now I'm going to feel this
Yeah.
instead of try to plow through it.
And letting that
Yeah.
downside be your upside, right? Like, even though that is that tough moment, you're gonna get upgraded on the other side.
Yes. Yes.
And you don't know what the upgrade looks like, right? Like, we're like,
Yeah, but you believe that an upgrade is going to happen.
if you're gonna survive it, you're gonna upgrade in one way or the other. And you're not gonna like poop rainbows, but
Yeah.
the upgrade is I'm more resilient, I'm stronger, I have more courage. For me recently, I'm braver than I've ever been because I had to make these crazy decisions. Not crazy, but like tough, right? Tough decisions. I get through these moments and I tell my mom, I'm like, Mom, I thought I did the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but now I've done something even harder. And I just keep saying, I'm like, why do I keep saying this to you? Like, I wish it was just one time in our lives I said, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But the truth is, everything is the hardest thing I've ever
I
done.
know. Everything is so hard because it's all new, right?
And that's awesome. Keep exploring beyond the edge. Explore, live a wondrous life, adventure. Have intercourse with the world, and really, some people are happy living a plain vanilla life. And I'm so glad that there are people that like vanilla. I like vanilla, but like consistency, and in a way, I think a lot of us do. But like, they're good. They don't need to like expand or grow, and they're like, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they just are still afraid to seek, and they don't want to access the vulnerability that it takes to have the tough conversation over and over again with your partner, with yourself, with your family, with your child, with everyone, with the world.
What does an upgraded life for you today mean?
I mean, it's just the process, right? Like I in podcasts, and you'll get the question too, like I talk about legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? And a lot of people, I was expecting them to say, "Oh, I want it to be my," not that this would be a bad legacy. "I want it to be my book, or I want it to be my music, or I want it to be this." But every person who's been on the podcast, I don't know if, and I haven't even released these episodes yet, uh, has said the process of connecting with other humans, and just are you a Hamilton fan?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so legacy, what is legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you'll never see. And that is what everyone is saying in different ways. And
Oh, I love that.
and so like you talk about what does like upgrading mean? I think the upgrading is this like continuous cycle of just living the legacy and living and breathing life, and just being in it, and trying to be as present as possible. It's not always going to happen. um, and just doing the best that I can. I don't know if there's a real definition other than the action of being in it.
Yeah, just committing to always being in it.
What do you think it is for you?
I'm not sure. I think it will shift like every season with my kids. I do think it's just having the courage to be present, having the courage to like I have this fantasy about as they grow older that I'm able to continue to do work I love and continue to be like a very hands-on parent and having the courage to set the boundaries I need to not let my work take over, to have that blend and to also not let my kids take over because I know I'm a better mom when I'm working because I love what I do. And I'm probably, a better coach and a better wife when I'm, also giving to my kids. So I think it's just having the courage over and over to create the life because this is a design. What we're doing is a design. It's not default, right? To design the life that feels right in the moment and to not fall into these traps. I worry as my kids get older, like falling into all these traps with sports and clubs and they need to do. I get worried about that and how to parent in the way I want to parent, knowing that those outside forces, like they're already behind because they haven't started lacrosse and they're 6. I'm like, how does this happen? Like why do we have to grow up so fast? It wasn't that way when we were kids or when I was a kid. You could explore and try things in high school for the first time, and today you can't do that.
Yeah. There's a whole philosophy called sampling.
Yes, yeah, where you can, like, try whatever you want, yeah.
Yeah, as kids, and if you let kids sample, children under 18 sample whatever they're interested in without really honing in on a specialty. Like for me, I trained in Junior Olympic softball and I had to pick one sport, right? And I played one sport since I was 8. And then all the way up through college. But if you can sample and say, oh, like, I want to do science club this summer, or I want to go hiking and learn about the wilderness, or I want to play softball this summer, whatever it is, um, you can actually find there's research that says these children that sample figure out what they want to do with their life 10 years earlier than people who stick to one thing because they've sampled 10 years.
Is that right? Wow.
So by 20, they know what they want to do. Whereas by 30, usually people who've spent their after college, if they go to college years from 20 to 30 sampling. Because when you're 10 to 20, you're sampling now.
Interesting. Oh, I wanna read more about that. It's so funny. I When I watch Maeve, my younger daughter, like play, keep telling this to Nick. I was like, I think we're supposed to get her into fencing. Like she always gets this sword, and she's like, I got, yeah, yeah, and she's like doing these fencing moves which she's never seen, and she's like exceptionally good at it. Like she is always like getting me. Like I can't escape her when she's in her stance, like a fencer, moving back and forth, and she terrifies me. And there's a really great fencing club in Columbus for whatever reason. It's like really well known. And I was like, I might get her into some obscure things just to try it. Like it could just be a fluke, but it's funny. Like Dorothy, if it's not something to do with like animals, I will be shocked. Like the way she loves and cares for animals and like talks about it all day. I will be really surprised if she doesn't do something that's serving animals in some way. And Maeve might be a fencer. We'll see.
Well, fencing is not as obscure in other countries. So
Right. I
she could
know.
take, follow mom's footprints and go all over the world.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah. You'd be like, "Oh, you're in Rome? I must be there
I
too."
will be there. I will meet you there, darling. And I
Yeah.
love you.
And I love you.
I am an aggressive cheerleader. It's so funny. I don't know why, but like when I'm cheering for people, I am so loud and it's embarrassing. And I'm almost like I this is what I want. I want to not feel like I'm editing my joy in rooting for people when my kids are teenagers because they will want to move out of the house because I get so happy for people. Like I watch kids I don't know play sports and I cry just because I love watching them work so hard. Ah, I'm so emotional when it comes to that stuff.
Especially when you have children and you understand, the time and the courage and the bravery it takes to stand up and to perform, whether it's sports or
Whatever it is. I remember Dorothy entered a little bike race when she was 4, and I somehow, like, messed up the class that she was going through the heats, and so she was going with, like, 5 and 6-year-olds, and she was a young 4. And I had my sunglasses on, and I cried the whole time just because I was so proud of her for wanting to do it. Like, all she wants to do is win a trophy in her life. Maybe someday she will. But who cares if she doesn't? She was so excited to try, and she finished crossed the finish line, and she said, "Did I win?" And I was like, "Oh, girl, you were last, but you won because you tried." Because I'm so happy that she did it. Like I don't care if you win or lose. I could care less. Like I was not. I was the opposite of you. Like I was not in sports like at all until later in life, and so I don't have any expectations for my kids to win. So if they try at something, that to me is like a win, such a win. It's so funny.
okay, I put a pin in our conversation like 5 minutes ago when you said, I'm a better mother because I work and, I have this life. And one of these thoughts that I'm having and that I just am really interested in right now is okay, not to compare ourselves to our husbands, but do our husbands go to work and say, I'm a better father because I work? No. And I think for me, just unlearning what is untrue, the untruth of I go to work because I'm a better human being, not a woman or a man or a wife or a mother, because I'm a better human being and I'm living out. Again, Viktor Frankl, I'm going to reference it. He says the best question you can ask yourself is, what does life expect from me? Not what's the meaning and purpose to life, like to be a mother, but oh, I'm going to dilly dally over here. But because you're a better human. And then
Mhm.
not needing to defend it, like let's not defend the fact that you
Yeah.
need to do this in your life because this is what life is expecting from you. Life is also expecting you to wash the dishes and do the laundry and pick up the kids
Yeah.
and, wipe their butts and like say, I love you. Right. But
Yeah.
like, let's just drop the labels and drop the idea that, we're doing this to become better mothers. Like we live in this mother under this mother umbrella and wear the mother hat all the time anyway, because you can never unmother yourself.
I love that because you're stuck with it. Yeah. It's true though. Well, even like, so if you're thinking about yourself and what does life expect from me, it's the same thing. Like if I did what I thought others expected of me under one lens, I wouldn't perform well in any of those areas. Like what makes my marriage work is that I know what life expects of me, right? And I do those things, which then makes my marriage more strong, right? Every day because I'm doing what I need and Nick is doing what he needs. And then together we come together and then we parent, right? But it's like I'm first, he's second, the girls are third. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how
That's a tough one.
it's hard, but I do feel like it's for us, I feel like it's true. Like we carve out that for us. And we're not getting lost in our kids so far. I think it will get harder as they get older. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have the conversation again.
I think that when you have children, choosing your partner first is one of the bravest, most courageous things you can do. Matt and I are still working on it because Ollie's just coming out of toddlerdom and it's hard because it's so demanding. And, with the pandemic and, just work being as it is, it's hard to pick it in that order. And so Esther Perel actually talks about it in her book, um, Mating in Captivity, that a lot of affairs or infidelity and even with yourself cheating on who you are comes from losing yourself in the identity of other people. So to choose yourself first and then to choose your partner second and to actually make numerically put them in an order like that and to be brave enough to say that and then say okay and then my kids are third, not that it doesn't mean it's all not hugely important, but in order to make it all work, my husband and I need a vacation alone. I need solo time. I need alone time with one of my children. I need alone time with the other child. And you're a little bit further ahead of me in life with children, but to anyone listening who is in a position where they have a young kid, like me, let's just say you're talking to me because you are talking to me. How do you go from this relationship where you're solely focused on your child to one of, okay, let's refocus. Let's let's open up this lens into a wider lens where it includes myself again and also my partner. I want to say you talk about one of your clients thinking that her marriage was done and then she saved her marriage. So like how do you reprioritize your life so that you can stand on your own and alongside your partner, your children, your family?
Yeah. I think number 1 is to create space for you to quiet the noise and understand like what does life want from me? What do I need? Have the courage to ask for what you need and create it, right? It's not always going to be easy, but I shared a story of wanting to go to this like coaching training when my kids were really little and we don't have a lot of support for our kids here and it was a lot to pull off, but I made it happen so I could go away for a few days, experience this thing, and then come back. So you have to have the courage to make it work, even when it's not convenient, because it's never going to be
Mm-mm,
convenient ever. There's nothing convenient about parenting
nothing.
for nothing. And what you said about having time to travel, just the two of you, I know so many couples that only either travel with their family or travel with other couples right? And so I've seen marriages fall apart because they are always traveling with other couples. They're on, this vacation circuit with five other couples. They're never alone together. And I think so much can be lost when you do that. So connecting one on one, Nick and I make it a point. I mean, pre COVID, obviously, but like, we go away 4 times a year, just the two of us. And it might just be a long weekend, but we have to do that. And then we come home and give that energy to the kids. I need to get better at the one-on-one time with our girls. That's something that we don't make happen very often. But I do know that we need to do that because they're always together, which can be, hard. But I would say carving out space for yourself, having the courage to ask for what you want, stop caring about what other people think. A friend of mine just read Heart Boss, and she does not have children. And she and her husband have a lake house and a condo in the city, and they're not always together. And she said, people are whispering about our marriage and wondering why we're not like always living in the same place. And she said, our marriage has never been stronger. She's like, we're dating again. We're having these flirty phone conversations. And, but people love to judge. You have to give up what people are saying about you and just be like confident in your choices. And if your marriage is working or your relationships and your kids and traveling alone, when I wrote about going to Chicago for a weekend on my own, one of my friends is married to a man that is, I mean, probably a narcissist, if we're being honest. And has a very tight grip on what she does, and they only can travel with the family. And he said to her when she said, "Oh, Reagan's going to Chicago by herself for a weekend, and like how great is that?" And he said she's probably very unhappy in her marriage. And he was like so appalled. Like me taking a time out and ordering room service and drinking champagne and watching, rom-coms for 3 days. To him, he felt like my marriage must be suffering, and I felt like I was on top of the world with my
Yeah.
marriage, and she's the one that actually has a marriage that's suffering because she's suffocated. Yeah, she doesn't have that option
Mhm.
to do something by herself or just with him.
I did the same thing last weekend. I asked my mom. She had to take okay, so this is a whole nother conversation we can open up. I know we're wrapping up because you gotta run, but
Yeah, yeah.
um I and this is about self-worth. So I was in this cycle of thinking that I wasn't worth my mom taking vacation days off to help me with Oliver so that I could go get some space and time to ask myself, what does life expect for me? To record some podcasts, to read, to throw caution to the wind and eat chocolate in bed after 10 p.m. and Netflix.
You go, girl.
Right? Like, come on. I had half a glass of wine and
You are wild, girl.
I really turned it up
Yeah.
that night. But 2 nights, and I went and I was so revitalized, and what did I hear from my husband? That people were saying, "Is everything okay? What's wrong with your marriage? Emily's back on social media," like and I was like, "Who's saying this?" And then Matt's like, "It doesn't matter because it doesn't, who cares? Like, you're happy, I'm happy, like, let's let it go." The moral of that story is to believe in yourself and to have believe that you're worth your parents' vacation days, your husband taking work off so that you can go, you know, whatever ignites your flame and gets you started again. Believe that sending your child to school earlier than you thought was appropriate or longer than you think is appropriate is fine because you're worth it all. Like whatever you believe you're worth is what you're worth.
You're worth it all. And I just keep thinking about your mom taking vacation days. I bet for her that was the best spent vacation time ever.
Oh, she loved it, and it was great because Oliver got to be with somebody else, and he hasn't been with somebody else, like, for 2 days. Actually, it was my first night away from Oliver in 2.5 years. I'd never been away from him. So, it was really relieving for me.
Oh, I'm so glad you had that experience. That's amazing. I hope that you're gonna do it again sooner than 2.5 years.
Oh, Matt and I are going, Saturday night to a hotel and, you know, just gonna get freaky.
I'm so psyched for you. Oh,
I'm psyched.
oh, that is the best. You know who else? Amy Jo. She just went
Yeah.
to Mexico and it was the first time away. from her son. And I'm like, I was celebrating that. I was like, oh my gosh, have all the sex, sleep in, take afternoon naps, do whatever the hell you want. It's so liberating.
Tequila.
Tequila, whatever it is, that makes me so happy for you.
It was great. And it is great and, just wonderful to choose each other. And I'm actually trying to help Matt see that we need to choose each other now. And he's not into these like self-help growth books as much as I am. He'll read Adam Grant, he'll read Viktor Frankl, he'll touch upon the James Nestor breath books and stuff like that, or like Wim Hof, which are all great. But anyway, it still is a process and a wonderful learning experience to choose the partner first and presence with the partner. Like really, what are you doing with that time? Are you on your phones or are you really engaging and having intercourse with them? Not physically, although that's great, but like, are you having this dance of conversation? Are you, you know, physically with them? Are you mentally with them? Um, are you trying to anticipate their next thought? There's just so much care and consideration that we can give to our partners and our children when we're present.
One thing that I fear is, so my kids, I have a pretty tight grip on their sleep. That's like that's my thing. And so my kids still go to bed at 7 o'clock. And that means that Nick and I have every night together. And something that I really appreciate is like, every night this week, we sit in the kitchen, and whether it's like we're drinking wine or whatever, but we're just sitting at the counter in conversation before we go to the couch and watch Netflix. And I fear the day that my kids are staying up until 10 o'clock at night, right? But I mean, maybe they won't want to be with us like they do now. Like when they're awake, we don't get alone time. I cherish our evenings. Like every night, even though we're home, it feels kind of like a date night because we're all in on those conversations. And it feels really special. And in the moment, I'm like, oh, this is special. Like this doesn't last forever.
It is special. All right, are you ready for rapid fire?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. So something most people don't know about you
Um, well, they don't know that I struggled with learning disabilities and have this like huge fear of being called upon in a classroom
or on a podcast.
or on a
Did you
podcast. Yeah. But that's okay. I don't have to like go write things on a board.
The interesting thing is like also you like give public speeches to hundreds of people, thousands of people.
I can talk all day long, but ask me to do like fractions or, long division, and I start sweating and
Yeah,
crying.
so you're not the one that like calculates the tip at all.
Hell no. Or I just over tip.
Over tip. That's
Yeah. That's just like always go big.
let me let me compensate for my inadequacy here.
Yeah. Just whatever. 50%. I can do that math. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. Ask my husband.
Oh my gosh. Can you describe bravery in 3 words?
Honest, authentic, uncomfortable.
Best party of your life.
Keg party bonanza in my backyard. You can read more about it in Heart Boss. It was a rager, and it was my signature party.
Cliffhanger. Favorite story in your book.
There are so many favorites, and it might be the one that's like, in the footnotes about a guy I went on a date with that needed to use a Garmin to get 2 miles from the restaurant to my condo. And I knew I would never go on another date with him again. Like, you can't sleep with a guy that can't get 2 miles without using, help. And so I think that's pretty funny.
Uh, what are 3 songs that describe you?
Um, I'm gonna so Thunder Road has deep meaning for me with Bruce Springsteen. I think probably Beloved, Mumford and Sons. What is the name of the song? It's an Otis Redding song, and I'm forgetting the name. And it was my wedding song. Isn't that horrible? I can't remember the name. I'll get back to you on the third one, but Otis Redding, my wedding song. I can sing it, but I can't remember the name of the song.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I really want it to be that I left the world better than, I just like, I fantasize about philanthropy. It sounds so silly. I don't give a shit about money other than I want to give money to people who need it. So I want that my kids to take that on. I want everybody to give as much as they can to lift up as many people as they can. I've been so lucky. I want, yeah, I want to uplift others.
And favorite place you've ever traveled?
Vieques. Vieques is a little island off of Puerto Rico. It's my favorite place to go by myself or with people.
Another book cliffhanger. You'll have to find out why. Thank you so much for coming on Brave Talks, Reagan. I love, love, love chatting with you, and our conversation was just amazing.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you. Have the best time on Saturday.
Take care, Reagan. If you'd like to follow or get in touch with Reagan, you can find her on social media at Regan Walsh _life coach. In next week's episode of Brave Talks, I share a poignant conversation with Jean Kwok, whose writing has topped the New York Times bestselling charts and has been enjoyed and recommended by Oprah, Entertainment Weekly, The Washington Post, and so many more. We'll be exploring how grief has guided her writings and the tenacious bravery it takes to live an engaged and surrendered life. Brave Talks is sponsored by Taja Collection Custom Candles. Taja Collection has designed a very special, really beautiful, amazing Be Pretty Brave candle for all of you listeners who want to light up a beautiful message in your home or send it as a gift to those who could use bravery and courage in their lives. You can find the candle on tajacollection.com. That's TAJA collection.com. And you can search for Be Pretty Brave and you'll find the candle there. Brave Talks is produced by Madeleine Inskeep. Video production is by Wallace Cruz. The music is produced by my dear friend Murray Hidary with Mind Travel. A heartfelt thanks to these three who support Brave Talks with their incredible talent and gifts. If you'd like to receive my monthly thoughts and a recap of this month's Brave Talks, head on over to emilynolan.com and click subscribe. Thanks for listening.